She was cast out by her husband with nothing but shame. The mafia boss saw her broken on the street and said, "You're mine now. Drop a like and subscribe if you crave a story that thrills, burns, and scars beautifully." The rain hammered down on Manhattan's streets like bullets on concrete, each drop a reminder that even the city that never sleeps had to bow to something. Marco Valentino, known in the underground simply as the Don, sat in his disabled Range Rover, fingers drumming against the leather steering wheel with controlled irritation. The engine had given up 3 blocks from his estate, sputtering its last breath like a rival who'd crossed him one too many times. "Daddy, why did the car stop?" 6-year-old Isabella asked from the back seat, her dark curls framing a face too innocent for the world her father inhabited. "Just a small problem, Principessa," Marco replied, his voice softening in a way it never did during business meetings. "We'll be home soon." Beside Isabella, 4-year-old Sophia clutched her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide with the kind of trust that made Marco's chest tight. These 2 girls were his entire world, the only pure things in a life stained with blood and broken promises. Their mother had left when Sophia was barely walking, unable to handle the weight of loving a man whose empire was built on fear. He reached for his phone to call his driver when movement across the rain-soaked street caught his attention. A door flew open violently and a woman stumbled out, nearly falling on the wet pavement. Even from this distance, Marco could see the red mark on her cheek, fresh and angry. "You're nothing!" a man's voice roared from inside the house. "Get out! I don't want to see your face again!" The woman, young, maybe mid-20s, stood frozen in the downpour, her clothes already soaked through. She wore jeans and a simple white sweater, now clinging to her frame. Her light brown hair was plastered to her face, but it was her eyes that stopped Marco cold. Even across the distance, even through the rain, he could see the mixture of shock, pain, and something else. Defiance. She wasn't broken. Not yet. A suitcase came flying through the door, bursting open on impact, clothes scattered across the lawn, instantly soaked. The door slammed with finality. Marco's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He'd seen countless acts of violence in his 33 years, had ordered many himself. But there was something about watching a woman being thrown into the street like garbage that made his blood run cold for different reasons. His own mother had been cast aside by his father's legitimate family when he was 10. He remembered that look in her eyes, that exact mixture of pride and devastation. "Daddy, why is that lady standing in the rain?" Isabella asked, pressing her small face against the window. Before Marco could answer, the woman began gathering her scattered belongings with shaking hands, trying to shove wet clothes back into the broken suitcase. She moved mechanically, as if her body was operating on autopiles while her mind processed the impossible. A car drove past, splashing water onto her knees. She didn't even flinch. Marco made a decision that would change everything. "Stay here, girls," he said, already opening his door. "Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me." "But Daddy," Sophia started. "I'll be right back, Tezzerina. I promise." The rain hit him like a wall the moment he stepped out, instantly soaking through his $3,000 suit. He didn't care. His Italian leather shoes splashed through puddles as he crossed the street, each step deliberate. The woman didn't notice him approach, too focused on trying to salvage what was left of her belongings. "This isn't the kind of neighborhood for a woman to be alone at night," Marco said, his voice cutting through the rain. She jumped, spinning around with wide eyes. Hazel, he noted, with flecks of gold that caught what little streetlight filtered through the storm. Up close, she was younger than he'd thought. 26, maybe 27. Pretty in an understated way, with delicate features and a small scar above her left eyebrow that told its own story. The mark on her cheek was already darkening to purple. "I'm fine," she said automatically, her voice hoarse. "Just having a bad night." "A bad night," Marco repeated, his tone flat. He glanced at the closed door behind her, memorizing the house number, the make of the truck in the driveway. "That what you're calling it?" Her chin lifted, that defiance he'd seen from across the street blazing brighter. I don't need help from strangers. No? He gestured to her broken suitcase, her soaked clothes, the bruise forming on her face. Seems like you need help from someone. Look, I appreciate the concern, but... She paused, really looking at him for the first time. Her eyes traveled from his rain-soaked designer suit to the expensive watch on his wrist, finally landing on his face. Most people looked away when they met Marco Valentino's eyes. She didn't. Who are you? Someone whose car broke down at the right time, he said simply. It wasn't a lie, exactly. I have 2 daughters in that Range Rover. They're watching this, and I don't want to teach them that it's okay to leave someone suffering in the rain. Something shifted in her expression. She glanced past him at the vehicle, where 2 small faces were pressed against the window despite his orders. Isabella waved. The woman's lips twitched in what might have been a smile in another lifetime. Your wife won't appreciate you picking up strays, she said, but there was less fight in her voice. No wife, Marco replied. Just me and my girls. He held out his hand. Let me at least call you a cab. Or is there someone I can contact for you? Family? Friends? The question seemed to hit harder than the rain. Her face crumpled for just a second before she locked it down again, that defensive mask sliding back into place. No one, she whispered, then louder. There's no one. Marco understood that kind of alone. He'd been that kind of alone before he built his empire, before he became someone people feared rather than pitied. Then let me help, he said, softer now. No strings, no expectations. Just a man who doesn't want his daughters to think their father is the kind of man who walks away. She stared at him for a long moment, rain streaming down her face, mixing with what might have been tears. Finally, she nodded, so slight he almost missed it. Okay, she breathed. Okay. Marco picked up her suitcase, what was left of it, and gestured toward his car. She followed, arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller than she probably was. When they reached the Range Rover, he opened the passenger door. Girls, this is... He paused, realizing he didn't know her name. Emma, she supplied, her voice barely audible. Emma Chen. Emma needs our help tonight, Marco continued, helping her into the seat with a gentleness that would have shocked his enemies. Can you say hello? Hi, Emma, Isabella chirped immediately. Why are you so wet? Don't you have an umbrella? Isabella, Marco warned gently. But Emma surprised him by laughing, a broken, watery sound that hit something in his chest. I forgot mine, she told the little girl. Pretty silly, huh? Really silly, Sophia agreed, clutching her rabbit tighter. But that's okay. Daddy forgets things too sometimes. Marco slid into the driver's seat, immediately calling his personal mechanic. The conversation was brief, efficient. Someone would be here in 15 minutes to either fix the car or tow it. Money made problems disappear. Some problems anyway. He ended the call and turned to find Emma staring at him with an unreadable expression. You didn't have to do this, she said quietly. I know, Marco replied, holding her gaze. There was something about this woman, something that called to the part of him he'd buried years ago, when he decided that feeling too much was a liability in his world. But I wanted to. Why? It was a good question. Marco Valentino didn't do things without reason. Every decision was calculated, every move strategic. But sitting here in this disabled car with his daughters in the back and this broken, defiant woman beside him, he couldn't find a logical answer. Because someone should have helped my mother when she needed it, he heard himself say, and no one did. The words hung between them, heavy with implications he hadn't meant to share. Emma's expression softened, some of that defensive wall crumbling. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be, Marco said. Just let me make sure you're safe tonight. That's all I'm asking. Before Emma could respond, headlights cut through the rain. Marco's mechanic, one of many men on his payroll, pulled up in a tow truck. The conversation was brief. The Range Rover needed a part that wouldn't arrive until morning. Marco made another call, and within minutes, a black Mercedes pulled up, his driver stepping out with an umbrella. "Mr. Valentino," the driver said, carefully neutral. "Your car, sir?" Marco caught the way Emma's body tensed at the formality, the expensive vehicle, the driver who appeared from nowhere in the middle of a storm. He could see the questions forming, the pieces starting to connect in ways he wasn't ready to explain. "Come on, girls," he said, unbuckling Isabella and Sophia. "Let's get everyone home and dry." "Is Emma coming too?" Isabella asked hopefully. Marco looked at Emma, really looked at her. She was shivering now, exhaustion and shock settling in. She had nowhere to go. She'd admitted as much. And something primal in him, something that went beyond logic or strategy, refused to let her walk back into that storm alone. "That's up to Emma," he said carefully, leaving her the choice he suspected she hadn't had in a long time. Emma stared at him, then at the girls, then at the rain-soaked street where her entire life had just fallen apart. When she spoke, her voice was steady despite everything. "Just for tonight," she said, "until I figure things out." "Just for tonight," Marco agreed, though something in his gut told him it was a lie they both wanted to believe. He helped her into the Mercedes, his daughters climbing in after her with the easy trust of children who'd never learned to fear strangers. As they pulled away from that house, from that closed door and scattered clothes, Marco glanced in the rearview mirror at Emma. She was staring out the window, her reflection ghostly in the rain-streaked glass. "Now you're mine," he thought, surprising himself with the possessiveness of it. Not in the way his world usually meant, not as property or leverage or a tool to be used. Something different, something dangerous, something that felt terrifyingly like fate. 02. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee so rich it felt like a physical presence. For a disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back. Michael throwing her out, the rain, the stranger with dark eyes and expensive clothes who'd appeared like some kind of guardian angel or dangerous devil. She still wasn't sure which. She sat up in the guest room bed, taking in her surroundings properly for the first time. The room was larger than her old living room, decorated in tasteful neutrals with artwork that even her untrained eye recognized as expensive. Everything screamed money, old money, serious money, the kind that bought silence and made problems disappear. The clothes she'd worn last night were gone, replaced with a fluffy white robe laid across the nearby chair. Emma's hands shook slightly as she pulled it on. This was too much, too kind, too generous from a man she didn't know. Men didn't help without wanting something in return. Michael had taught her that lesson thoroughly over 3 years of marriage that had slowly suffocated her spirit. She found her way downstairs following the sound of children's laughter. The house was stunning, modern but warm, with high ceilings and artwork that probably cost more than she'd made in her entire life working at the art gallery. Her bare feet sank into plush carpeting as she navigated hallways that seemed to go on forever. The kitchen was a chef's dream, all marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. Isabella and Sophia sat at an enormous island, eating pancakes and giggling at something on Sophia's plate. Marco stood at the stove, sleeves rolled up, looking nothing like the soaked stranger from last night, and everything like a man completely comfortable in his expensive domain. "Emma?" Isabella spotted her first, waving enthusiastically. "Daddy made chocolate chip pancakes. They're the best." Marco turned, and Emma's breath caught. In daylight, cleaned up and relaxed, he was striking in a way that made her nervous. Sharp jawline softened by that neat stubble, dark eyes that seemed to see too much, and an air of controlled power that was simultaneously attractive and alarming. He wore black slacks and a crisp white dress shirt, no tie, looking like he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm. "I hope you slept well. Coffee?" Yes, thank you," Emma managed, accepting the cup he poured. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, and she pulled back quickly, cradling the mug. "You didn't have to do all this." "The girls were hungry," Marco said simply, flipping another pancake with practiced ease. "It's no trouble to make extra. You like chocolate chips? Who doesn't like chocolate chips? The words came out before she could filter them, and she was rewarded with a genuine smile that transformed his entire face. It softened the hard edges, made him look younger, almost approachable. Exactly what I told their mother, he said, and something flickered across his expression. She thought they should have quinoa and kale for breakfast. We disagreed on many things. Emma heard the story beneath the words. The absence, the ended relationship, the single father raising 2 daughters in a world that looked nothing like hers. How long have you been on your own with them? She asked before she could stop herself. 3 years, since Sophia was barely walking. Marco plated pancakes for Emma, generous with the chocolate chips. Their mother needed different things I couldn't give her. Like what? Normal. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. She wanted normal. 9 to 5, white picket fence, no secrets. That's not my life. Before Emma could ask what he meant, her phone buzzed in the pocket of the robe. She'd somehow managed to hold on to it during last night's chaos. The screen showed 17 missed calls from Michael and twice as many texts. Her stomach twisted as she skimmed them. Anger, blame, demands that she come back to apologize, threats about what he'd do with her belongings. Problem? Marco asked, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. My ex-husband, Emma said, shoving the phone back in her pocket. He wants me to come back and grovel. Says everything that happened was my fault. Was it? The question was direct enough to sting. Emma met his gaze, surprised by the lack of judgment there. I asked him to stop drinking, she said quietly. I told him I'd leave if he raised his hand to me again. That made it my fault, apparently. Marco's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Again, he repeated, the word dangerous. How many times? Does it matter? Emma looked away, ashamed of her own weakness. I should have left the first time. Everyone always says they should have left the first time. But it's never that simple. Marco slid her plate across the counter. Eat. We can talk about next steps after. The pancakes were delicious, fluffy and sweet with just the right amount of chocolate. Emma ate mechanically, aware of Marco's eyes on her, aware of the girls chattering about some cartoon they wanted to watch, aware that she was sitting in a stranger's kitchen wearing his robe and eating his food with nowhere else to go. I'll find a hotel today, she said suddenly. Get out of your hair. You've been more than kind, but I can't impose. Where will you go after the hotel? Marco interrupted. Do you have savings? Family? A job? Each question landed like a small blow. I'll figure it out, Emma said, lifting her chin. I always do. I'm sure you will. Marco leaned against the counter, arms crossed. But there's another option. Emma's guard went up immediately. Which is? I need help. He gestured to the girls. Isabella starts first grade next month. Sophia's in preschool. My current nanny quit last week. She found the lifestyle too intense. The hours are irregular because of my work. The pay is generous. And I have a separate guest house where you'd have privacy. Emma stared at him. You're offering me a job. You don't even know me. I know enough. Marco's gaze was steady. I know you stood in the rain gathering your clothes instead of breaking down. I know you looked my daughters in the eye and smiled even when your world was ending. I know you're not weak, despite what that bastard made you believe. You don't know that, Emma whispered. Yes, I do. He moved closer, not invading her space but present, solid. Because weak women don't survive what you survived. They don't walk away. And they definitely don't tell men like me that they can handle things on their own. Men like you, Emma repeated. What does that mean? Marco was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. It means I'm not like other employers. My work is complicated, demanding, sometimes dangerous. Dangerous how? That's something you'd need to decide if you want to know. He held her gaze. But my daughters are never in danger. That's a line I don't cross. Ever. Emma should have asked more questions. should have demanded details about what kind of complicated work required this level of wealth and vagueness. But looking at Isabella's bright smile and Sophia's trusting eyes, looking at this man who'd stopped in the rain for a stranger, she made another impulsive decision. 1-month trial, she heard herself say. If it's not working for either of us, I walk away. No hard feelings. Something flashed across Marco's face. Satisfaction, maybe, or relief. Deal, he said, extending his hand. Emma shook it, his grip warm and strong. Thank you, she managed. For everything. Don't thank me yet, Marco said with a slight smile. You haven't experienced Isabella's morning energy or Sophia's bedtime negotiations? The girls' laughter filled the kitchen, and for a moment, Emma let herself believe this might actually work. That maybe fate or karma or whatever force controlled the universe had put her on that street at that exact moment for a reason. That maybe, just maybe, being thrown away by one man had led her to something better. She had no idea how complicated better was about to become. That afternoon, Marco showed her the guest house, a charming 2-story building behind the main house with its own entrance, living room, bedroom, and bathroom. It was small compared to the main house, but larger and nicer than the apartment she'd shared with Michael. I'll have your things brought from your old place, Marco said casually. What you want anyway. The rest can rot. You can't just... Emma started. I can, Marco interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. And I will. Give me a list of what's important. Anything sentimental, anything irreplaceable. The rest is garbage. Emma wanted to argue, but the thought of facing Michael again made her stomach turn. How? Let me worry about that. Marco pulled out his phone, fingers moving quickly. Someone will bring your things here by tomorrow. You won't have to see him or speak to him. He won't just let someone take my stuff, Emma said. Michael isn't reasonable when he's angry, and he's been drinking. He'll be reasonable with my people. Something hard entered Marco's voice. Trust me. That word again. Trust. Emma had trusted Michael when he promised the drinking wasn't a problem. Trusted him when he said he'd never hurt her again after the first time. Trusted him until trust became another weapon he used against her. But this felt different. Marco felt different. Okay, she said quietly. I'll make a list. Marco's expression softened. Good. Girls, he called toward the main house. Want to help Emma unpack? Isabella and Sophia came running, already chattering about which stuffed animals Emma might like best. As they led her back to the guest house, Emma glanced over her shoulder at Marco. He stood in the doorway watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Protective, possessive, something deeper that made her heart skip uncomfortably. She was in over her head. Emma knew that with absolute certainty. But drowning in deep water was starting to feel better than suffocating on dry land. So she followed the girls inside and tried not to think about what kind of man could make promises about retrieving her things with such absolute confidence. The kind of man most people feared, a voice whispered in her head. The kind of man who might be more dangerous than the one she'd left behind. But as Isabella grabbed her hand and Sophia showed her the collection of picture books they wanted to share, Emma decided that some dangers were worth the risk. At least that's what she told herself as the sun set over Marco Valentino's estate, painting everything in shades of crimson and gold that looked beautiful and ominous in equal measure. Arrow 3. 3 weeks later, Emma had fallen into a routine that felt surreal in its domesticity. She woke each morning to Isabella's enthusiastic wake-up calls, made breakfast while Sophia told elaborate stories about her stuffed rabbit's adventures, and spent her days in a world that was both completely normal and utterly foreign. The girls were easy to love. Isabella was bright and energetic, already reading above her grade level and constantly asking questions about everything. Sophia was quieter, more thoughtful, with an artist's eye for color and beauty. They'd attached themselves to Emma with the kind of desperate affection that came from children who'd learned early that the women in their father's life didn't stay. Marco was the complicated part. He worked irregular hours, sometimes gone before dawn and home after the girls were asleep. Other days he worked from a home office Emma was never allowed to enter. The door always closed. Voices sometimes raised in rapid Italian or terse English. Men came and went, always respectful, always impeccably dressed, always watching Emma with assessing eyes that made her skin crawl. But with his daughters, Marco transformed. He was patient and present, reading bedtime stories with different voices for each character, braiding Isabella's hair with surprising skill, letting Sophia paint his nails purple because she insisted it was his color. And with Emma, he was something else entirely. Careful, attentive, always maintaining a respectful distance that somehow felt like the opposite. She caught him watching her sometimes. When she was reading to the girls, when she was laughing at one of Isabella's jokes when she thought she was alone. His gaze was intense, hungry in a way that had nothing to do with the usual male attention she'd learned to deflect. It felt like he was memorizing her, studying her, trying to figure out a puzzle she didn't realize she presented. "Earth to Emma," Isabella sing-songed, waving a hand in front of her face. They were at the park, the girls playing on the swings while Emma pushed them, lost in thought. "You're doing that thing again." "What thing?" Emma asked, forcing her attention back to the present. "The thing where you look at Daddy's house and get all weird and confused," Sophia supplied helpfully. "You do it a lot." Emma felt her cheeks heat. "I was just thinking about dinner. What do you want tonight?" "Spaghetti!" Both girls shouted in unison, then dissolved into giggles. They were walking back toward the house, the girls running ahead, when Emma's phone buzzed. Michael. Again. He'd been calling and texting constantly since her things had been delivered 3 weeks ago, delivered by 2 men who'd looked like they could break Michael in half, who'd made it clear that any attempt to contact Emma again would have consequences. Michael had gone quiet for exactly 4 days. Then the messages started again. "You can't hide forever. I know where you are. That rich bastard won't protect you when he gets bored." Emma deleted them without reading the rest, but her hands shook slightly. She'd been so careful not to tell Michael anything about Marco, but he'd found out somehow. The thought of him showing up here, seeing the girls, causing a scene. Problem? Emma jumped. Marco had appeared on the path ahead, moving silently for a man his size. He wore dark jeans and a black button-down, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. His eyes were hidden behind sunglasses, but she could feel the intensity of his gaze. "Daddy!" Isabella and Sophia ran to him, chattering about the park. He listened with genuine interest, but his attention never left Emma. "Girls, go wash up for dinner," he said after a moment. "Emma and I need to talk." They ran ahead without argument, used to their father's serious moods. Emma stood rooted to the spot, knowing what was coming. Marco removed his sunglasses, and his expression was harder than she'd seen since that first night. "How long has he been contacting you?" Marco asked, his voice deceptively calm. "How did you—" Emma started. "Your face," Marco interrupted. "Every time your phone buzzes, you flinch. You delete messages without reading them. You're constantly looking over your shoulder when we're out. So I'll ask again. How long?" "A week," Emma admitted. "Maybe more. He's just angry. He'll get over it." "Men like him don't get over it." Marco stepped closer, and Emma fought the urge to back up. They escalate. They find new ways to hurt, new buttons to push. You know this. "What am I supposed to do?" Emma's voice rose defensively. "Get a restraining order? That's just a piece of paper. It won't stop him if he really wants to." "I'll stop him." The words were simple, absolute. Something cold slithered down Emma's spine. "What does that mean?" "It means he won't bother you again." Marco's tone was matter-of-fact, like discussing the weather. Simple as that. "Marco, you can't just—" Emma paused, finally asking the question she'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. "What exactly do you do? Your work, I mean. Everyone treats you like you're royalty. You have men who show up whenever you call. You live in a house most people dream about. What is it you actually do?" Marco was quiet for so long that Emma thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. I manage investments, portfolios, business interests across the city. That's not an answer, Emma said. That's corporate speak for none of your business. Maybe because it is none of your business. But there was no heat in his words. You asked for a job, Emma, not my life story. Fair enough. Emma turned to walk away, surprised by how much his deflection stung. I'll make dinner. Emma, wait. Marco caught her arm gently, and she froze at the contact. His hand was warm through the thin fabric of her sleeve, calloused in a way that suggested more than office work. I'm not trying to shut you out. But there are things about my life that are safer if you don't know. Safer for who? Emma met his gaze. You or me? Both. He released her arm, but didn't step back. They were close enough that Emma could see flecks of amber in his dark eyes, smell the expensive cologne that probably cost more than her monthly salary. The truth is complicated. Messy. Not something I can explain in 5 minutes before dinner. Then explain it after dinner, Emma challenged. After the girls are asleep. You say you want to help me, that you'll protect me from Michael. But how am I supposed to trust that when I don't even know who you really are? Something flashed across Marco's face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. You want the truth? All of it? Yes. Even if it changes how you see me. Changes everything? Emma thought about that. About the life she'd built here in 3 short weeks. The girls who'd become like her own. The man who watched her with eyes that saw too much and promised more. About the alternative. Running again. Starting over somewhere else with nothing but bruises and broken dreams. I'm not as fragile as you think, she said quietly. I can handle the truth. Marco studied her for another long moment, then nodded slowly. Tonight, then. After the girls are asleep. I'll tell you everything. He started toward the house, then paused. Fair warning, Emma. Once you know, you can't unknow. And it might make you want to run. Let me worry about that, Emma said, following him inside. Dinner was unusually quiet. The girls sensed the tension between the adults and behaved with uncharacteristic restraint. Marco helped with bath time, reading extra stories to delay the inevitable. Emma cleaned the kitchen with meticulous care, buying time, building courage. Finally, with both girls tucked in and sleeping, Emma found Marco on the back patio. He'd poured 2 glasses of wine and sat staring out at the landscaped yard, shoulders tight with tension. So, Emma said, accepting the wine and sitting beside him, who is Marco Valentino really? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, softly, almost reluctantly, they call me the Don. Emma waited, sensing there was more. I run the largest organized crime syndicate in New York. Marco continued, his voice flat. My family, not blood family, but the men who work for me, we control shipping, construction, waste management, and several other legitimate and not so legitimate operations across 3 states. We've done this for generations. My grandfather built the foundation, my father expanded it, and I've made it untouchable. The words hung between them like smoke. Emma's wineglass felt heavy in her hand. Organized crime, she repeated carefully. Like the Mafia. Exactly like the Mafia, Marco confirmed. Because that's what it is, what I am. He finally looked at her, and his eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them. I've broken laws. Destroyed rival operations. Built an empire that men fear and respect in equal measure. The money you see, the house, the protection, it all comes from that world. Emma's mind raced. This explained everything. The mysterious visitors, the careful security, the way people treated him with that mixture of deference and fear. The girls? She managed. Are they safe? Marco interrupted firmly. Always. That's the one line I never cross. My daughters live separate from my work. They don't know what I do. Won't know until they're old enough to understand. And they're protected by every man in my organization. Anyone who touches them signs their own death warrant. Death warrant. The casual way he said it made Emma's stomach twist. Have you... She couldn't finish the question. Killed people? Marco's smile was bitter. Not personally, not in years, but I've ordered it. I've sanctioned it. Men have died because I made a phone call. That's the truth you wanted, Emma. That's who shares custody of the daughters you've been caring for. Emma should have run, should have packed her bags and disappeared into the night. But as she sat there, watching this dangerous man stare at his wine like it held answers, all she felt was a strange, terrifying understanding. The men who brought my things, she said slowly. What did they say to Michael? Enough to make him understand that bothering you again would be a terminal mistake. Marco set down his glass. I had him investigated too. The drinking, the gambling debts, the women he saw while you were working to pay his bills, everything. If he contacts you again, I'll know. And I'll make sure he understands that some doors once closed stay closed. That's not normal help, Emma whispered. No, Marco agreed. It's not. But I'm not a normal man, and this isn't a normal situation. He turned to face her fully. You wanted truth. Here it is. I'm dangerous. I'm ruthless when I need to be. People who cross me tend to disappear or wish they had. But my daughters are angels, and they deserve someone who sees them as children, not leverage. Someone who isn't afraid of bedtime tantrums or scraped knees or tough questions about why mommy left. Someone like me, Emma said. Someone exactly like you. Marco's voice dropped. And if I'm being completely honest, which apparently I am tonight, it's not just about the girls anymore. Emma's heart stuttered. What do you mean? I mean, I notice when you laugh at Isabella's terrible jokes. I notice when you unconsciously braid Sophia's hair the way she likes. I notice that you take your coffee black because you think adding sugar is indulgent, and that you read poetry before bed when you think no one's watching. His gaze was intense enough to burn. I notice everything about you, Emma Chen. And it's becoming a problem. Why is it a problem? Because men in my position can't afford attachments. Because anything I care about becomes a target. Because I swore after Isabella and Sophia's mother left that I'd never bring another woman into this world, never put someone He stopped abruptly. It's a problem because you make me want impossible things. Emma's breath caught. She should leave. Should thank him for his honesty and find somewhere, anywhere, else to start over. But instead, she found herself asking, what kind of impossible things? Marco leaned closer, and the air between them became electric. Things like this, he murmured, and kissed her. It was nothing like kissing Michael had been, desperate and demanding and full of need. Marco kissed her like she was precious, like he was memorizing the taste of her, like this might be the only chance he'd get. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing the last fading traces of the bruise Michael had left, and Emma felt something inside her crack open. She kissed him back. They pulled apart simultaneously, both breathing hard. Emma's mind screamed warnings, but her body hummed with want she'd forgotten existed. This is insane, she whispered. Completely, Marco agreed, not moving away. You should leave. Go back to your guest house. Forget this happened. Find another job working for a normal family doing normal things. Should I? Emma's voice was steadier than she felt. Yes. His thumb traced her bottom lip. But I really hope you don't. Marco? Her words were cut off by the sound of breaking glass inside the house. They both jumped to their feet as alarm bells immediately began shrieking. Marco's entire demeanor changed in an instant, from conflicted man to dangerous predator. Stay here, he commanded, already moving toward the house. The girls, Emma started, are in a secure room with reinforced walls and locks that would take a tank to break through, Marco said, pulling a gun from somewhere Emma hadn't realized he was carrying. Don't move. Don't follow. If something happens, run to the guest house and call the number programmed as security in your phone. He disappeared inside before Emma could respond. She stood frozen on the patio, heart hammering, as shouts echoed from inside the house. Minutes felt like hours. The alarm cut off abruptly, leaving ominous silence. Then Marco reappeared, gun gone, expression cold and deadly. "False alarm," he said shortly. "Security drill that got out of hand." Emma didn't believe him for a second. What really happened? Someone tried to send a message. His voice was ice. They failed. It won't happen again. "Was it Michael?" Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. "Not directly, but he told the wrong people where you were. Made you a target to get to me." Marco's hands clenched into fists. "That's why getting close to me is dangerous, Emma. That's why this," he gestured between them, "is impossible." "Is that really what you think?" Emma was surprised by the steel in her own voice. "That I'm going to run because your world is complicated? I'm not that woman anymore, Marco. The woman who ran from problems and hoped they'd disappear. Emma, I'm not done." She stepped closer to him, closing the distance he'd created. "You told me the truth, all of it. The dangerous parts, the illegal parts, the parts that should scare me away. And yes, it's terrifying. But you know what else is terrifying? Staying in a situation that slowly destroys you because you're too afraid to jump. Being alone because some man convinced you that you're not worth more. You are worth more," Marco said roughly. "You're worth so much more than anything I can offer. That's not your decision to make." Emma reached up and touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw, the barely controlled emotions beneath his careful mask. "I'm choosing to stay. I'm choosing to see where this goes, whatever this is. Not because I don't understand the risks, because I do, and I'm choosing them anyway." Marco stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You're insane." "Probably," Emma agreed, "but I'm also done letting fear run my life. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to keep being your daughter's nanny because I love those girls, and you're going to figure out how to keep me safe from whatever came through that window tonight. And maybe, if we're both very brave and very stupid, we'll figure out what happens next." For a long moment, Marco said nothing. Then, slowly, he smiled. A real smile, full of wonder and heat, and something dangerously close to hope. "You're right," he said. "You're absolutely insane." "Takes one to know one," Emma replied, and kissed him again. This time, neither of them pulled away. The next 2 weeks existed in a bubble of tension. Marco increased security. More men at the gates, cameras everywhere, bodyguards following Emma and the girls like shadows. Isabella asked why Mr. Ricci had to come to the park. Sophia wanted to know why Daddy looked so worried. Emma told them it was temporary. She wasn't sure if that was true. At night, after the girls were asleep, Marco and Emma found excuses to be near each other. A glass of wine on the patio. Going over schedules. Discussing nothing and everything while the air between them crackled with want. They kissed again, several times, but never went further. Some invisible line neither acknowledged. "This is torture," Marco said one evening, his forehead resting against hers. "Having you so close and not being able to—" "I know," Emma whispered, "but the girls are the only reason I have any self-control left." He pulled back, running a hand through his hair. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you. About the security situation." Emma's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "My people tracked the men who broke in. They were hired guns, paid to send a message." Marco's jaw tightened. "The money came from Antonio Russo. He's a rival who's been trying to move into my territory. He found out about you through Michael." "Michael's working with them?" Emma's voice was hollow. "Not knowingly. He's drowning in gambling debts. Russo's people approached him, offered to clear what he owes for information about my household. Michael thought he was just answering questions about staff." Marco's expression was grim. "He had no idea he was painting a target on you." Emma sat down heavily. "So this Russo person knows about me, knows I matter to you." "Yes." Marco crouched in front of her, taking her hands. "Which is why I need you to listen carefully. I'm handling Russo. There's a meeting scheduled in 3 days. Neutral territory, Proper protocol. This will be resolved. Resolved how? However it needs to be. The coldness in his voice reminded Emma who she was falling for. But until then, you and the girls don't leave the property. No exceptions. Marco, you can't keep us locked up. I can, and I will. His grip tightened. I've lived in this world my entire life, Emma. I know how men like Russo think. You're not just some woman. You're someone I care about. That makes you valuable. Leverage. And if Russo gets desperate or stupid enough, he might try something before our meeting. So you stay here, where I can protect you. Emma wanted to argue, but the fear beneath his authority stopped her. This wasn't Marco being controlling. This was Marco being terrified. Understood, she said quietly. 3 days. 3 days, he agreed, and kissed her like he was afraid it might be the last time. The next 48 hours crawled. Emma distracted the girls with movies and baking. Marco barely slept, spending most of his time in his office or on the phone. The men who worked for him came and went with increasing frequency, expressions hard and ready. On the second night, Emma found Marco in his office at 2 a.m., surrounded by papers and half-empty coffee cups. He looked exhausted, older than his 33 years. You should be resting, he said without looking up. So should you. Emma took the papers from his hands. This can wait. No, it can't. But he pulled Emma into his lap, burying his face against her neck. I'm sorry, he murmured, for bringing this into your life. Stop apologizing. Emma ran her fingers through his hair. I chose this. Chose you. Tomorrow I meet with Russo. We negotiate. He backs off, and you're safe. And if he doesn't? Marco was quiet. Then he learns why people don't cross the Valentino family. Emma shivered. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you alert. He lifted his head. But trust me, Emma, I've been playing this game since I was 15. This ends tomorrow. Promise? I promise. He kissed her slowly. Now go to bed. The girls will be up early. Emma went but didn't sleep, listening to the sounds of the house, of men moving with purpose. When dawn came, she felt hollowed out. Marco left at 10, dressed impeccably, looking every inch the powerful man he was. He kissed both daughters goodbye, held Emma longer than necessary, and whispered, I'll be home for dinner. Count on it. Then he was gone, leaving Emma alone with 2 little girls who had no idea their father was walking into danger. The hours crawled. Emma made lunch, played games, read stories. Isabella sensed her distraction. Sophia refused her nap. By 3, Emma was jumping at every sound. At 4, her phone rang. Unknown number. Emma almost didn't answer. Hello? Emma Chen. The voice was male, accented, unfamiliar. You don't know me, but I know you. Marco's pretty little nanny. The woman who made the dawn forget how to think. Emma's blood turned to ice. Who is this? Antonio Russo, and I have a proposition. His tone was conversational. Right now, Marco is sitting in a warehouse discussing terms he'll never accept. He's stubborn. Thinks he can protect everything through intimidation alone. What do you want? Simple. You're going to get in the car pulling up to Marco's gate right now. Come with my men willingly, quietly. Leave those little girls with security. If you do this, they stay safe. If you don't threaten them, Emma interrupted. They're children. Exactly, children who've become collateral in a war their father started. Russo's voice hardened. You come with my men. We use you to ensure Marco's cooperation. Everyone walks away. Or you refuse, and I'm forced to get creative. Emma's mind raced. She could call for help, but if Russo was willing to make this call, he had contingencies. And the girls were in the main house, just 50 feet away. Let me talk to them first, Emma said. Tell them I'm running an errand. 5 minutes. Then my men come in. The call ended. Emma stood frozen, then moved. She ran to the main house, finding the girls in the playroom. Mr. Ricci, she said, keeping her voice steady. I need to speak with you. She pulled the bodyguard aside, speaking low and fast. Antonio Russo's men are at the gate. He called me. Wants me to go with them or he'll escalate to the girls. I'm going. Ricci's face went white. Ms. Chen, you can't. I can and I will. Emma grabbed his arm. Call Marco immediately. Tell him what happened. Tell him. Her voice cracked. Tell him I'm sorry. He'll kill me if I let you walk out. He'll kill you if anything happens to his daughters. Emma pulled out her phone, quickly texting Marco. The girls are safe. I'm fixing this. Don't blame yourself. She handed her phone to Ricci. Keep them inside. Lock down the house. Before Ricci could respond, Emma walked to the front door. Through the window, she saw a black SUV at the gate. Her hands trembled as she reached for the handle. This was insane. Stupid. Probably suicidal. But the alternative was letting those men near Isabella and Sophia, and Emma would die first. She opened the door and walked toward the gate, spine straight. The men watched her approach with surprised respect. Emma Chen, one said. Get in the vehicle. One condition, Emma said, steadier than she felt. You promise those girls don't get touched. No matter what happens, they're off limits. The man studied her, then nodded. You have my word. Emma climbed into the SUV, the door closing with horrible finality. As they pulled away, she allowed herself one look back at the house. I'm coming back, she promised silently. Whatever it takes. The drive felt endless. Emma tried to memorize the route, the turns, anything that might help. When they stopped, she was pulled out into a warehouse district, industrial, isolated. Antonio Russo waited inside, a man in his 50s with silver hair and cold eyes. He smiled when he saw Emma. The famous Emma Chen, he said. Braver than I expected, or more foolish. Where's Marco? Emma demanded. On his way. I made sure he got word about our new guest. Russo circled her like a predator. You're the leverage I needed. Marco pretends nothing touches him, but everyone has a weakness. If you hurt me, he'll destroy you, Emma said. Probably. Russo shrugged. But by then, I'll have what I want. Territory, respect, maybe partnership. And you're going to help me get it. Emma said nothing, conserving energy. She wasn't helpless. She'd survived Michael. She could survive this. The warehouse door burst open 20 minutes later. Marco stood in the entrance, surrounded by his men, looking more dangerous than Emma had ever seen him. His eyes found hers immediately, and the relief that flashed across his face nearly broke her. Russo, he said, voice deadly calm. You made a mistake. Did I? Russo's men raised weapons, and Marco's men responded. Suddenly the warehouse was a powder keg. Seems to me I made the perfect move. Marco's gaze never left Emma. Are you hurt? No, Emma said. I'm okay. Good. Something shifted in his expression. Emma, listen carefully. No matter what happens next, keep your eyes on me. Emma nodded, understanding what he wasn't saying. This was about to get violent. But she was wrong. Because Marco Valentino did something no one expected. He set down his gun. The warehouse fell into shocked silence. Marco's men stared at their boss like he'd lost his mind. Russo's men exchanged confused glances. Emma's heart stopped as Marco raised his hands, showing he was unarmed. You want to negotiate? Marco said. Then let's negotiate. Man to man. No weapons. Just talk. Russo laughed uncertainly. You think I'm stupid enough to believe you're surrendering? I'm not surrendering. Marco took a step forward. I'm offering you a deal. The territory you want, the docks, the waste contracts, the construction bids. You can have them, all of them, in exchange for one thing. Her, Russo guessed, gesturing at Emma. Her safety, guaranteed. Written agreement, witnessed, unbreakable. Marco's voice was steady. You let her walk out, and I'll give you everything you've been fighting for. Marco, no, Emma said. Don't. Quiet. Russo snapped. To Marco. Your entire empire for one woman? That's weakness. Call it whatever you want. Marco moved closer, positioning himself between Emma and Russo's men. That's the offer. Take it or refuse it. Russo studied him with calculating eyes. Why should I believe you'll honor it? Because I've never broken my word in 20 years. Marco's tone was absolute. When Marco Valentino makes a deal, he keeps it. I'll sign contracts, transfer deeds, whatever you need. But she walks free first. Emma's mind was reeling. He was willing to give up everything, his empire, his power, his life's work, for her. It was insane and noble and terrifying. Marco, she tried again, you can't. I can and I will. He looked at her, and his eyes held things he'd never said. You told me I was worth more than my title. Well, here's the truth. The man underneath would burn this city down for you. The empire is just buildings and money. You're real. How touching, Russo said dryly. There's one problem. If I let her go, I lose my leverage. What stops you from changing your mind? My word. Marco's voice was iron. If that's not enough, you don't know me. The standoff stretched. Emma's heart hammered. This was it, where everything either came together or fell apart. She could feel violence hanging in the air, could see fingers tensing. She had to do something. Had to shift the balance. Wait, Emma said loudly, stepping forward. There's another option. Emma, don't, Marco started. I'm not your leverage, Emma continued, looking at Russo. I'm a witness. I heard you on the phone. You told me exactly what you wanted, how you planned to use me. You admitted orchestrating this. Russo's expression darkened. So? So my phone was recording. It was a lie, a desperate, dangerous lie. But Emma held his gaze. Voice-activated app. Everything you said is backed up to cloud storage, and if I don't check in with a code within the hour, that recording automatically goes to the FBI. Dead silence. Emma could feel Marco's eyes on her, could sense his men's surprise, could see Russo calculating. You're bluffing, Russo said. Am I? Emma kept her voice level. You want to risk it? The FBI would love recorded evidence of kidnapping, extortion, conspiracy. That's 15 to 20 mandatory minimum. And unlike Marco's organization, you don't have federal judges in your pocket. It was a guess based on overheard conversations, but she could see it landing, could see Russo's certainty wavering. Even if that's true, Russo said slowly, killing you solves the problem. No, it doesn't. Emma's voice was stronger. It's automatic. The recording is already uploaded. The only thing stopping it from going to the authorities is me checking in. You kill me, you guarantee your arrest. Then we make you give us the code. You could try. Emma was amazed at her calm. But you'd never know if the code I gave you was real or fake. How confident are you in those odds? Marco had moved closer during her speech. He was now within arm's reach of Russo, his men subtly repositioning. Whatever was about to happen, they were ready. You've got guts, Russo said, something like respect in his voice. But what's your play? I let you go, you erase the recording? The recording stays, Emma said. Insurance for both of us. You don't come after me or Marco or his family, and it never sees daylight. You break that agreement. The FBI gets an anonymous tip. Mutually assured destruction, Russo murmured. Clever. He looked at Marco. Your woman has a brain. I appreciate everything about her, Marco said quietly. Which is why I'm giving you one last chance. Territory for her safety. Or refuse and deal with the consequences. The two men stared at each other, years of rivalry compressed into a single moment. Emma held her breath, aware that her bluff only worked if Russo believed it. Finally, Russo smiled, a real smile, full of dark amusement. You know what? I believe her. That recording exists or it doesn't, but the risk isn't worth it. So here's my counter. We split the disputed territory. 60-40 in your favor, Valentino. I leave your family alone, all of them, and we pretend this never happened. 70-30, Marco countered. And you relocate operations out of Manhattan entirely. Brooklyn, Queens, I don't care. But you stay out of my primary territory. 65-35, and I keep my warehouse in the Bronx. Deal. Marco extended his hand. But if you ever threaten anyone I care about again, I won't. Russo shook firmly. I'm not a fool. Today proved that. You've got something worth protecting, and that makes you predictable. I can work with predictable. He glanced at Emma. You, however, are full of surprises. Get her out of here, Russo said to Marco, before I change my mind. Marco was at Emma's side in 3 strides, hands checking her for injuries. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? I'm fine, Emma assured him. Scared, but fine. Good. He pulled her against his chest, holding her tight. Don't ever do that again. When Ricci called, his voice broke. I thought I'd lost you. I'm okay, Emma repeated, feeling him tremble. We're okay. Marco pulled back to look at her. That recording. Did you really? No, Emma admitted. Complete bluff. Marco stared, then started laughing. Real laughter she'd never heard from him. You bluffed Antonio Russo, one of the most dangerous men in New York, with a fake recording. It worked. It was insane and brilliant and… Marco cupped her face. And I'm completely in love with you. The words hung between them. Emma's breath caught. Marco, I know it's too soon. I know this is backwards, but I can't keep pretending. His thumbs brushed her cheeks. I love you, Emma Chen. Your courage, your heart, the way you love my daughters. All of it. Emma kissed him, cutting off his rambling. Poured everything she'd been too afraid to say into that kiss. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. Take me home, she whispered. To the girls. They're safe, Marco assured her. But yes, let's go home. They walked out together, surrounded by his men. The afternoon sun felt like a benediction. Emma was shaking now that adrenaline was fading. You're shaking, Marco noticed. Emma, I'm okay, just processing that I bluffed a mafia boss and survived. You did more than survive. Marco stopped, turning her to face him. You saved us. Saved the girls. Saved my empire. Saved me from a deal I'd have regretted. You were incredible. I was terrified. Courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway. He kissed her forehead. Come on. Isabella and Sophia need to see you're safe, and then we need to talk about what comes next. Emma nodded, following him to the car. As they drove back, Marco's hand never left hers. They found Isabella and Sophia in the secure room, surrounded by guards. The moment the door opened, both girls launched themselves at Emma, nearly knocking her over. You came back, Sophia sobbed. I thought you left like Mommy. Never, Emma promised fiercely. I'm not going anywhere. Isabella pulled back to look at Emma seriously. Daddy was really scared. I've never seen him scared before. Emma glanced at Marco, who was watching with an unreadable expression. I'm sorry I worried everyone, she said. But I'm okay. We're all okay. They spent the evening returning to normalcy. Dinner, baths, bedtime stories. But Emma could feel unspoken conversations hanging over everything. Finally, with both girls asleep, she found Marco in his office. We need to talk, they said simultaneously, then smiled weakly. You first, Marco said. Emma sat. That thing you said in the warehouse, about being in love with me, did you mean it? Every word. Marco's gaze was steady. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But yes. Good. Emma took a breath. Because I think I'm falling in love with you too, which is terrifying given we've known each other less than 2 months. But there it is. Marco's expression transformed. Emma? But we need to address the elephant in the room, Emma continued. Your world. What happened today can't happen again. Not just for my safety, but for Isabella and Sophia's. They can't grow up constantly afraid. I know. Marco ran a hand through his hair. I've been thinking about this. About what kind of life I can offer them. And the truth is, he paused, I can't keep doing this. Running an empire that puts everyone I love at risk. Today proved that. Emma leaned forward. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm stepping back. Not completely. I can't just walk away without causing chaos. But I'm going to transition leadership over the next 6 months. Put someone trustworthy in charge. Keep my legitimate businesses and let the rest go. He met her eyes. I want a life, Emma. A real one. With you and my daughters. With Sunday mornings and school plays and normal problems. Marco, that's your entire world. My world is 2 little girls who need a father present. Who need a mother figure who wants to be there. He moved around the desk, kneeling in front of her. My world is the woman who walked into danger to protect my daughters. Who bluffed her way out with nothing but guts. That's what matters. Emma's eyes stung with tears. You'd really give it all up? For you? For them? In a heartbeat. Marco took her hands. I'm not saying it'll be easy, or that the transition won't have complications. But I'm done choosing power over people who make life worth living. I want more. And if you're willing, he swallowed hard. I want to build that life with you. Yes, Emma said, the word catching. Yes, I want that too. Marco pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was precious. They stayed like that for a long time, just breathing together. There's something else, Marco said eventually. Michael. He didn't knowingly put you in danger, but he still gave Russo information. Do you want me to handle it? Handle it how? Nothing permanent, Marco assured quickly. But he needs to understand there are consequences. He's already lost everything, Emma said slowly. His wife, his self-respect, probably his home. I don't need revenge. I just need him to leave me alone. Then that's what'll happen. Marco's voice was firm. But if he ever tries to contact you again, you tell me immediately. Understood. Emma smiled slightly. For someone trying to leave the criminal world, you still sound commanding. Old habits. He kissed her softly. But I'm learning. You'll teach me normal, and I'll teach you how to navigate being with someone decidedly abnormal. Deal? Deal. 6 months later, Emma woke to chaos. Emma! Sophia took my favorite hair ribbon. Isabella's voice carried from the bathroom. Did not. You left it at school, Sophia countered. Emma smiled, pulling on her robe. Some things never changed, except everything had. The estate was quieter now, with fewer guards and no mysterious men in suits. Marco worked from home most days, consulting for legitimate businesses while divesting from everything else. The transition hadn't been seamless. There were still complications, still old contacts who didn't understand why the Don was retiring. But Marco handled it with strategy, just directed toward building something different. Emma padded into the bathroom to mediate the ribbon crisis. She'd become expert at these negotiations. Isabella, check your backpack, she suggested. Sophia, look in the drawer. Whoever finds it first wears it. Loser sets the table. Both girls took off running. Argument forgotten. Emma laughed, heading downstairs. She found Marco already in the kitchen, making pancakes in sweatpants and a t-shirt. Morning, he said, pulling her in for a kiss. How'd you sleep? Like someone who wasn't kidnapped by rival mobsters, Emma teased. Too soon for jokes about that, he said, smiling. It's been 6 months. I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations has expired. Emma poured coffee. Besides, it ended well. It did. Marco was quiet, focused on pancakes, then casually. I have something to ask you. Okay. The girls' school is having a father-daughter dance. They've been hinting it would be nice if there was a mother-daughter component. He glanced at her. What would you think about making our arrangement more permanent? Emma's heart stuttered. Permanent how? Instead of answering, Marco pulled a small box from his pocket. Emma's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a stunning ring, a single diamond on platinum, elegant and understated. Emma Chen, he said, voice rough with emotion. You walked into my life on the worst night of yours and somehow made everything better. You love my daughters like they're yours. You make me want to be better, not more powerful, but better. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Be their mother officially and my wife, and let me spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice? Emma was crying now. Yes, she managed. Yes, of course, yes. Marco slid the ring on with shaking hands, then pulled her close. I love you, he murmured. So damn much. I love you too, Emma said, laughing through tears. Emma, I found the ribbon. Sophia's voice carried from upstairs. Isabella owes me. Marco and Emma looked at each other and burst out laughing. Think they'll be okay with this? Emma asked. They'll be thrilled. Marco kissed her again. They've been asking when you're going to be their real mom for months. Then let's tell them. Emma grabbed his hand. Girls, family meeting. Daddy has news. They gathered on the couch, Isabella and Sophia bouncing with curiosity. Emma showed them the ring, and both girls just stared. Then Isabella shrieked, Does this mean Emma's staying forever? Forever and ever, Emma confirmed. Sophia launched herself at Emma. You're gonna be our real mom? If you'll have me. Yes. Both girls chorused, and suddenly everyone was hugging and crying happy tears. Later, after breakfast and during a quiet moment, Marco pulled Emma into his arms. No regrets? Not one, Emma said honestly. This life, it's nothing like what I planned, but it's everything I needed. Even the crazy parts? Especially the crazy parts. She turned to face him. You gave me safety when I had none. Love when I'd forgotten what it felt like. A family when I thought I'd lost my chance. So no. No regrets. He kissed her slowly, thoroughly. When they broke apart, Emma rested her forehead against his. From the living room, Isabella called, Daddy, Emma, come watch with us. They went, settling onto the couch with Isabella on Marco's lap, and Sophia curled against Emma's side. The afternoon sun streamed through windows, painting everything in warm gold. Emma's ring caught the light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the walls. This was it, the life she'd been thrown away to find. The family she'd walked through fear to reach. The love she'd risked everything to claim. It wasn't perfect. There would still be complications from Marco's past, still whispers about the reformed crime lord and his unexpected wife, still moments of uncertainty. But sitting here, surrounded by the people who'd become her world, Emma couldn't imagine wanting anything different. I love you, Marco murmured, quiet enough that only she could hear. I love you too, Emma whispered back. Now and always. And in a house that had once been a fortress, in a life that had started with betrayal and tears, Emma Chen finally found her home,